Hey guys, thanks for downloading episode 2. Whilst I was checking on the quality of the episode, I noticed there was some mistake on referencing the ride. So to correct it, the official name of the ride in Dreamworld is the Thunder River Rapid Ride, or TRRR, and sometimes we mix up the order. Thanks for being patient, and we hope to bring you more quality podcast episodes in the future. To contact us, you can email at thefireinthedesert@gmail.com or Twitter at fireinthedesert. Links in the podcast description below. And now, on to the show. Alright, so welcome back to the Fire in the Desert with myself, Johnny, and Pat. How you going?
Hey Johnny, doing pretty good.
Alright, so episode 13, the Thunder Rapid River Ride, Dreamworld, which happened at Dreamworld on the 25th of October 2016. Shane Green was one of the first people on the scene of the day on the ride's malfunction, an experience he describes in his first television interview as a nightmarish ordeal. I was getting nervous because of the voices on the radio, just the tones. He had been working on the first A-Team for 4 years and said the panic in his colleagues' voices alarmed him. It was nothing compared to what he saw when he arrived on scene that day, jumping into the water to assist a colleague. There were lots of screaming and yelling going on, he said. I crawled into the raft just to check for signs of life, which I knew at the time, by what I could see, was more than likely a waste of time. At the end of the day, almost a generation of one family had been wiped out. The former police officer and paramedic now lives as a virtual recluse near the Victorian Alps, crippled by severe post-traumatic stress disorder from what he saw that day. The Thunder River Rapid Rides was supposed to provide whitewater thrills from the safety of a 6-person raft. Near the finish, the raft rides up a conveyor belt before slowly descending back into the trench full of water. But on this day in 2016, an empty raft got stuck, causing the raft coming behind to flip on its side. The immense force involved could be seen when the raft was later removed for forensic examination. 2 victims were crushed between the raft and the conveyor belt. 2 more victims were thrown into the water. Mr. Green said at first he could see 3 patients until the water in the trench started draining. All of a sudden, there's another person there, and you're just thinking this is like a nightmare, or a movie, or some disaster zone, he said. It seems surreal because it shouldn't be happening. This was our theme park where we could make people happy. There was lots of yelling, overwhelming distress, and despair from members of the family that were there, Mr. Green recalled. I was shaking and I was crying, and completely beside myself knowing that there could have been another 2 young people, Mr. Green said. That night, when I went back into the clinic just to clean up the equipment, I'm rolling my pants legs up, and I'm stained in red from the legs down. And that was an article, Like a Nightmare, the preventable accident that gave paramedic and Dreamworld first responder PTSD, written by a current affairs staff on 9now.com.au. So when you go to an amusement park, you pay the ticket at the front counter, you go through and ride the rails to get a good time with your friends and family. You expect that you go home at the end of the day. But unfortunately for 4 people, they would not be able to go home and lost their lives on the Thunder Rapid River Ride at Dreamworld. And it was apparently the most popular ride in the theme park. So, Pat, do you recall this event?
I do actually. Yeah, it was an immense tragedy. I remember it was primetime news for weeks easily, and yeah, there was like, I'd say, how many, like tens of thousands of people would go through that park.
Have you actually ridden on a ride?
Not this one, no. My family didn't go to Dreamworld that often. We'd go to Movie World or Sea World more often than not, like if given the choice between them. But I know lots of people who go to Dreamworld have gone on the ride, that sort of thing, and no issue. But again, this was this freak, tragic accident that happened.
Yeah, I think I went to Dreamworld maybe once, and then I think I went to Movie World a couple of years ago. But I just remember hearing about it. I think it was Yeah, my sister's wedding was approaching that time.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I was in Brisbane, and then we had relatives from overseas come over, and they had just gone on to Dreamworld,
Yeah.
and then they're like, "No, this thing happened."
Yeah, well, Dreamworld is kind of this for the Gold Coast. It's kind of this quintessential feature of the Gold Coast experience. If you're going to the Gold Coast or going to Queensland, that's going to Dreamworld is something that you do as a major tourist attraction. And to hear the story of such a tragedy happen, pretty much out of nowhere, like there was no setup or like this is something that could happen. It just happened. It's like, hang on, that doesn't make any sense. How did that happen?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and like for Dreamworld, you think like this is our version of Disneyland. Like,
Yeah.
when we hear about you going to the Gold Coast in Australia, like, are you going to Dreamworld? Usually.
exactly.
And like this is a big brand name, and then to think, and to think 4 people died on the most popular attraction.
And when you realize that that's even something that could happen, you don't think that that's something that is even possible necessarily. As you said, you go there to have a good time, and that's it runs at complete odds with what the expectations of the place are supposed to be.
Yeah, it's a theme park. It's supposed to be happy, joy. And
Well, happy and safe.
happy and safe.
Yeah.
You pay. How much is it?
Oh,
Like
$100,
$100,
$80, $100, something like that.
if you're an adult, and then maybe like a bit of discount.
If you're a kid, maybe $50.
That's not
Well,
cheap.
Well, I'm from a family of 5, so it's that's a pretty penny if you want to take the family off off to a theme park.
I remember, like, Disneyland in Hong Kong, it was like $500 Hong Kong, which is about $30 Australian.
That's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, but it's not cheap.
Yeah.
All right, so for the listeners out there, like who've listened to the sinking of seawall, and then we talked about the Russian-Japanese war, about tragedies. I think we'll be doing the same thing, except we'll be trying to unpack where it is, starting from the very beginning, and then we'll go deeper and deeper into Dreamworld and the organization and some of the things they try to mitigate, and we'll see whether this thing could have been prevented. Most of this stuff will be drawn out from the coroner's report. So if you go onto, if you go on Google, if you look up the Thunder Rapid River Ride or TRRR coroner's report, it's all on a public domain, except when I quote some of the other passages. All right. So what happened? What was the technical or immediate cause? So what was the cause? If you just draw a circle around the attraction and see what's happening there. So there's raft number 6, so that's the raft ahead of the raft that we're describing.
So the one that got stuck.
Yeah.
Also the empty.
So raft number 6,
the empty one.
Well, raft number 6 departs with guests, and it goes down a slide with no issues.
Okay.
Then later on, raft number 5 with the 4 victims and the 2 children depart later, go down the ride with no issues. Then there are 2 water pumps. There's one on the north side and one on the south side, and these water pumps take the water from the reservoir and put them into the trough, and so the south pump fails. The water level then descends and drops. The conveyor is still operating, so that brings the raft up from the end of the ride, so the end of the slidey bit, up to the loading unloading area where you would queue up.
Yeah.
So it has to go back to the very top,
Yeah.
and then using gravity, the raft drops down.
Yeah.
So conveyor takes the raft up. It loads number 6, and the conveyor is about two belts with planks and slats across to catch the raft and lift them to the starting point. Okay, raft number 6 then descends the conveyor, but due to the water level, it is now trapped on the supporting rails. So these supporting rails are in the bottom of the trough at the load and unload area, so that when people step off the raft, that it doesn't flip.
Right.
So that's one of the things that they try to help prevent flipping, but now it's causing
now because it can't flip, it's become a stop.
It's become stuck. Yeah, there's an unforeseen flow-on effect from there. So raft number 6 stops, and it's stuck on the supporting rails when the water level drops. at the same time, raft number 5 is now picked up on the conveyor and descends. Raft number 5 contacts raft number 6. Actually, it hits it twice. And on the third time, it pivots up. So the front facing part starts to lift up. Raft number 6 is still stationary, but raft number 5 pivots up, and with the rear, it is pulled into the conveyor. It is pulled between the gap of the conveyor, so the end of the conveyor, and the start of the supporting rail. So there just happens to be enough gap so that the conveyor pulls it into this gap.
Yeah.
And then they said that passengers are seen to fall from the raft into the conveyor. And that's when tragedy strikes.
Yeah.
So, you have to Google some images, and what we have here are some of the images that you can get from newspapers or online on Google, and you can just see, there's a conveyor belt. You can fall through that conveyor belt easily, and you can be turned into pretty much, I mean, here the graphics look like mincemeat. Like the arrows are just like destroyed. Yeah. So, victims and survivors. Victims, so there was Miss Cindy Lowe, age 42, with her son, Kieran Lowe. Then there was Miss Kate Goodchild, age 31, with her daughter, Ebony Turner. Then there was Luke Dorset, age 35, brother of Kate Goodchild. And then Mr. Roosbear Aghi, age 38, partner of Luke Dorset, and had moved from Iran to Australia. So the 4 adults have died, and the 2 children survived. And some of the comments when I was reading this, I was trying to go through some of the news articles, and they said injuries not compatible with life.
Yeah.
And from what I've been trying to look online, it's when a medic or the first responder says injury is not compatible with life, I mean, it's like, why did you stop doing CPR? Because they had injuries not compatible with life, i.e., there was, the head was over there.
Right.
I can't do CPR. I can't.
Such catastrophic injuries that there's
It's
nothing you can do.
Yeah, they're clearly dead. Yeah. And I think when we read through that intro story, like you said, I thought I was doing CPR, but it was a waste of time.
Yeah.
So Kate Goodchild, according to the mortuary examination, so she had crushing injuries to the chest and abdomen, rib fractures, and liver fragmentation. Luke Dorset, neck, spine, rib injuries, severing of the brainstem. Cindy Lowe, injuries to the head, chest, abdomen, pelvis, and limbs. Roosbear Aragi, compressive impact to chest from fast-moving implement, internal and external chest injuries. And to continue from the coroner's report, all victims did not show signs of drowning. And from here we can deduce that most of the injuries occurred from the falling from the raft or through impact injuries from the conveyor belt. And you can easily go onto videos on YouTube, and you can see, there's a stationary raft, and then raft number 5 is flipped and it's pulled into the gap. Because the conveyor belt, it's still moving. It draws it in to that gap. And then what's another image? There was another image like I meant to pull out, and you can see like the rear of the raft. There's the seats there. Like those actually, that's not wood. I think that's like fiberglass, and you can see like
it's shredded.
Half a like.
It's like a giant chunk has been ripped out of it.
It's like a shark. It looks like that just bit into it. But that's the conveyor belt.
That's what the conveyor belt's doing.
Well, that's what I'm thinking it's doing.
Yeah.
All right, there's a few technical terms here. So nipping point or nip point. So points in the machinery with potential to nip, bite, or catch body parts. So, I'm thinking on the escalator because, always, there's always a nip point because you can be drawn into that when you're holding onto the rubber bit on the escalator.
And if you wrap your fingers around it underneath, there's that nip point where you can get your fingers caught.
Yeah, or like the old when you're a kid, you're scared of your toes being bitten by the metal bits that rotate, the sharp bits. Yeah. Seat belts. So seat belts of the raft were actually made from a simple Velcro strap. So you think roller coasters and all the serious rides, it's like that.
It's a heavy buckle.
It's a car. It's your car seat belt, which is designed to stretch when experiencing several Gs and a metal buckle. But here it's like a simple Velcro strap.
Yeah.
And this is what, 2016. So
Yeah.
it's like
Well, it's also good to note, when was this ride originally? Like, again, you build the ride and then you renovate and you update it from over the years. But also, there's a factor here that the ride has been a staple of Dreamworld for many, many years. So it's old. Yeah. And it's not a bullet train, ultra fast roller coaster where when you're designing or engineering this thing, you're thinking, okay, we need to put seatbelts, heavy duty stuff to make sure you don't fly off the roller coaster. The rides just aren't the same sort of class of thing that they're doing. So
yeah. So it's a Velcro strap designed to restrain passengers during the rafting moment on the ride. It's not meant to restrain passengers when the raft flips over or goes up perpendicular so that the passengers in the front actually fall from the seat. Like, it's not weight bearing. The trough, so that's pretty much where you fill up fill up with water. So it's a trough with a channeling system that holds water over length from about 410 meters. Transporting the raft with occupants, it can go 1.3 meters in depth and varies in width from 3 to 5 meters. It's made of concrete and it consists of a series of turns and drops to simulate the rafting experience. Supporting rails and the water level. So throughout, we said before, the trough, there's a pair of 100 mil steel rails, spaced 1,450 mils apart, bolted to the bottom of the concrete floor of the trough, and it's designed to prevent the raft from sinking to the bottom of the trough and prevent it from tipping or flipping over when the occupants embark or disembark. And so the supporting rails, so there at the unload point, there was 760 mil gap from the end of the conveyor belt to the start of the supporting rails. So there's a catch point there. And so when the water level drops, you can actually see the rails, or the rafts would just remain on top and remain stationary because they're not floating and moving forward. And you can always see images from the coroner's report, and they'll actually show you when the water level, when they drain the entire ride, you can see like there's metal bits there, there's the conveyor belt there, and there's a little catch point there. So conveyor belt. So since the ride begins with a drop from the start, so you release from the start point, then we start the drop. So you need to go back to the very top and reset the ride. And so the conveyor is chain driven by electric motor. The conveyor belt is constructed from a series of wooden planks spaced evenly across the belt. Planks are about 780 mil apart and create a gap about 160 mil by 1,250 mil. So the gap between the planks, it's sufficient for a person of moderate size to fall through.
Yeah.
And the speed of the conveyor is constantly at 2.7 kilometers per hour.
Right.
We're drawing, we've drawn pictures from the coroner's report and just showing it to Pat while we're going through it. So, you can always go online, look at the coroner's report, and just go through the pictures. Technical issues and the pumps and the faults. So there's two electric pumps that we talked about, north and the south, and they maintain water level in the trough. The south pump had issues throughout the week, and on the morning of the incident, there was a call out for technicians to inspect and clear the fault. And the pump had earlier been referred to an external contractor who was booked in to inspect the pump. That date of inspection was going to be occurring after the date of the incident. And the south pump had a fault on it, indicating an earthing fault. And you can always clear the fault by when a technician opens up the panel and just resets it.
Yeah.
So when south pump stops functioning when raft number 6 is ascending the conveyor belt, they had a CCTV footage that the main operators would observe, and the water was seen flowing back into the pump outlet. And so when the water level drops, raft number 6 is unloaded but trapped on the supporting rails, thus leading to raft number 5 to collide with it. And then the operators. So there was two operators on the ride, so number 1 and number 2. So number 1 was Mr. Peter Nemeth, 38 years, responsible for oversight of the ride and also for managing number 2 operator. So Nemeth worked for 4 years at Dreamworld and on the TRRR for 2 years as a number 2 operator for 6 months. Then later on graduated to number 1 operator. He was also a safety representative for the ride operator and engaged in the safety audits of rides. And he was only elevated to those positions because of his experience and tenure,
Right.
and not provided any specific training. So, like, you're the most experienced in the group, why? Because you worked there the longest.
Yeah.
And then, you know what? Since this, you're our senior person within our team, you can be the safety auditor.
Right.
I don't know if there's any extra money or extra allowances account of that. It doesn't say. But then you represent our group because we trust you.
Yeah.
So
Which is also how business is done, not just in the theme park world, but also that's how just general business is done as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
So there will be a monthly meeting with the safety department.
Yeah.
Number 2 operator, so Miss Courtney Williams, 21 years,
Right.
worked part-time and also full-time since July 2015, so 1 year and 4 months prior to the accident. She was trained on the TRRR on the day of the incident.
Right.
So she was given 1.5 hours of training before being deemed competent by the operations manager.
And the operations manager was number 1 operator? Or
No,
was it
the operations manager, we're talking about, your the person who's in charge of all the operators on the ride.
Right,
So
gotcha.
that person will be roaming around,
Gotcha. Yeah.
I guess walkie-talkie or sitting in the office,
Yeah.
waiting for the calls and doing
Yeah.
training, supervising.
1.5 hours.
managing
That's
shift.
enough to. Okay.
And you know what? 21 years old.
Yeah.
I don't know what she was doing. Maybe she's a uni student or something. Like,
Probably.
but,
yeah.
finish high school, doing some uni work, maybe doing some kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I couldn't really find much about this person.
Yeah.
But you know what? During part-time, full-time, I guess during the summer peak period,
Yeah.
earn some extra money at
Yeah.
TRRR. Not expecting, to be managing this.
Yeah. No, I more remarked on going, who thought it was a good idea, regardless of the individual in question here, who thought it would be a good idea to give anyone 1.5 hours worth of training and said, go, off you go, have a good time.
Dreamworld.
Fair enough.
All right.
Again, that's why we're digging into it.
Yeah. So
Who thought it was a good idea?
I tried to sketch it out. I was trying to apply some safety model. So
Yeah.
when you're doing accident investigation analysis, you try to do like a bow tie model. So what was the cause of the incident? So that's the very center of the bow tie, and then you try to go before the accident. So preventative
Things could happen.
risk controls.
Yep.
And then after it's a consequence. So how do you
Yeah.
recover from that?
Yeah.
And I try to look at the hazards. Was probably some of the things that we should capture and what are the barriers. Then there was also an interesting bit about past history on a TRRR, which I think we will dig in later on.
Yeah.
And then we put in like, where's the barriers there? And then afterwards, after if the thing flipped, what are some of the things that could have helped recover from the incident? Right? So, I guess like think of an airplane. So if you had an engine fault, what's there in the system to help you recover? Well, you have the pilot's training, you have maybe engineering, you have a spare engine that will give you enough lift before it descends.
Before it falls out of the sky.
So with the river raft, like, what do you think if when you pivot up, then if you had engineered it with that accident in mind, you wouldn't have that nipping point.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't have put the wooden slats. We wouldn't have set up a gap so that someone could actually fit through into the conveyor belt. You would have gone. Someone could have fallen out of the ride into the water. They would have hit the wooden slats, and that would essentially be the worst of it. You would then have dealing with possibility of drowning or something. But there's a separation point between the lethal conveyor belt and the people.
Yeah, so like passive engineering design.
Yeah.
Which it's designed to not you don't create a hole that people can drop through.
Yeah, exactly.
Or maybe you have an active engineering design, which is like a sensor which would detect some kind of abnormality and will stop.
Yeah.
And then I try to go through the cheese slices. We have individual actions, local conditions, risk controls, organizational influence, and we try to dig deep go into regulatory framework, go through all these layers, and I try to draw lines on there. I don't think, well, for the listeners, I try to do little events from each of the slices, and I try to draw lines. And what you end up with is like that sort of, what do you call it, Aki map? Or I guess think about that crime investigation.
Yeah.
Where the guy's trying to work out everything, and he has like little post-it notes and have little red strings of yarn which join it.
I see those and go conspiracy theory plotting, but go ahead.
But that is how you sort of communicate. You can see it's on the whiteboard. You can see how
here's all the individual nodes, and here's how the nodes relate and interconnect with each other. Yeah. Good conspiracy theory, but yeah.
Oh, it's not a conspiracy theory. I'm pretty sure like investigators and in this incident would have done the same.
I think I've seen one of the versions of the Sherlock Holmes TV shows. One of the iterations. I think they had him doing something like that. Yeah.
All right.
Anyway.
So first layer in the cheese slice.
Yeah.
So individual actions. So emergency button was not activated. So this was one of the things that we drawn out from the report. I think it was the number one operator. He testified that he did press the button. But then when investigators came in, they actually found like there's no button pressed according to the logs.
Right. So of course, all that machinery, there would be logs indicating what's actually happened, and they would have recorded that there's a button, that button would have had, when it was pressed, it would have sent a signal through.
Yeah.
There was no signal.
So number one, there's only two operators. Number one sits at the main, switch, and he's also managing the guests as well.
Yeah.
Number two was fairly new. We talked about the 21-year-old girl.
Yeah.
She was managing the unload area.
Right.
And where number one stands, actually, he cannot see the unload point. There's like some obstruction in there. Not only that, you're dealing with guests.
Yeah.
You're dealing with queue. You're also trying to load people up at the same time.
To switch that around, to put yourself into that position, imagine that you're one of the guests in that crowd. It's a hectic, massive press of people because everyone behind you is wanting to push ahead to get on the ride, and it's pandemonium.
Complaining children.
Exactly.
Hot, tired, waiting in line for a very long time.
And you've got that one attendant who's going. They've got to check and make sure each and every person is buckled in, set up, ready to go. Okay, you're done. Move on.
Yeah.
And you're doing the same repetitive task again and again and again, on hours on end, all day long, every day. So, yeah.
There's also CCTV footage that can monitor. Also attached to the panel, so they're also going to look. The number one operator has to look at that as well.
Yeah.
Number two operator actually sits underneath number one, so where does the buck stop? Stops at number one.
Yeah.
And when we've heard like she was new, and then to press the emergency button, you'd be very confident that of shutting it down. It's danger, because why is it? Because then you end up with doing the operation side. Your boss will have to come in.
Yeah.
You have to tell the guests, sorry, you had to do emergency shutdown.
Yeah.
This is her first day.
Yeah. It's like you don't want to be doing that.
No.
So was it her first day? Oh, that's right. You did say
so. This is her first day on the ride.
Yeah, she'd been given the 1.5 hour training in the morning, and okay, gotcha. Yeah, you did say that.
All right. So another one. South pump failed. So it failed twice before the event, and actually 3 times on the day. So 11:50 of the day, the first pump failed. Water level dropped. Operators noticed a drop and commenced emergency shutdown. There was an alarm, and then there's an earthing fault. And the technician came in, reset the button, pressed the reset button, cleared the earth fault. Okay, so he wasn't able to clear the fault with the reset button, so he did a hard reset, power on and off. Yeah. But that's it. Yeah. Like there was no investigation. What's the earth fault?
Yeah. Back in grade 7 or 8, learning about electricity, is that's a power shortage? Possibly, like a surge.
Like you would have something to earth, right? So it's to maintain that voltage. I can see that, there's water involved in this ride. Maybe something's dripping, something kind of a short circuit. Who knows? But the end line is the guy did investigate. The technician did not investigate. He just pressed reset.
Yeah.
It's a fault. All right, just reset it.
Yeah. And again, I can see the scenario playing out again, where the technician gets called out. He's been called out to dozens of rides. He's been called out to all sorts of rides every single day. You go, yep, that's fine. Press the button, move on.
Yeah.
Essentially, George Jetson, essentially, just pressing the button, or Homer Simpson, right? Pressing the button,
and it works.
Like, okay, easy fix. Move on to the next job, pretty much. Not worth the time investigating. Just keep pushing the people through.
Yeah. Second pump failure at
Yeah.
13:09. So what is that? An hour and 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Water level drops. Then Miss Williams, so the 21-year girl, was at the main control panel, but swapped with number one operator who shut down the machine. Again, so she's not very confident. So number one operator, hey, I recognize what's going on. I'll shut it down.
Yeah.
Rafts are trapped, and then they rested on support rails. The same technicians come out and conduct the reset.
Yeah.
And in this case, the ops manager, so the person in charge of
Man.
all the operators. So
The person who gave the training to Miss Williams.
yeah, so Miss Cotter,
Right.
Miss Cotter, the ops manager, is captured in the coroner's report, and she's recorded as talking to the technician. What are we doing about this pump problem? This is ridiculous. And the technician, he is said to advise her that it's our procedure that the alarm has to occur 3 times before the ride is shut down. If another one happens, we will close the ride for the day. The ride is fine now to run. And it goes, it does not appear that the second fault of the south pump was escalated to the engineering and technical department supervisor.
Okay. So they have a process, a procedure in place, and the ride is starting to tick the boxes of that procedure, but it hasn't reached that point yet.
Well, hold that thought. So what we hear from the technician is he believes that if I want to do a flat shutdown for the rest of the day,
yeah.
it has to occur 3 times.
Yeah.
We'll dig a little bit deeper in that
Oh,
area.
yeah. I suspect so. Yeah.
So it's never reported because it hasn't reached its threshold
Yeah.
for reporting. There was no full and auto shutdown, so forensics and experts noted that the emergency shutdown button for stopping conveyor was different from the water pumps. There was a lack of system full auto shutdown to shut down both the pump and the conveyor. So if one fails, the other one will still operate.
Right.
So the button will only stop, I believe, it's stop the conveyor, any mechanical bits.
Yeah.
It does not stop the water pump.
Right.
Likewise, the water pump failure or fault will not trigger a conveyor stop.
Right. So you're stopping the issue at the current issue, but you will not shut down everything, pretty much. Yeah.
And I believe
Which you can start to see the problems in that kind of thinking. If you've got a problem with a complex piece of machinery like a theme park ride, and you're only stopping a few of the different moving parts and letting the other parts continue on as normal, and you haven't got a button to stop it all,
yeah.
you've got a problem there.
Well,
a problem brewing.
Remember, for like high school, when you operate this engineering machinery, there's always a big red button.
Oh yeah,
And big red button means stop everything.
everything. Yeah,
But in this case, you press the big red button and something still keeps moving.
yeah,
You design emergency stop. So it
Yeah.
means stop.
yeah.
And
I remember that in design class. I actually remember that in design class where the teacher would demo, this is what's going to happen if there's a problem, and if you're using let's say the hand drill or the drill press or something, and you're using it and there's
blood.
Well, let's say another student's tie, for example, because as boys we have to wear ties in school, for example. One of the students' ties gets caught in the drill and starts getting twisted. The teacher notices it, presses the button, all of the drills stop.
Yeah.
Imagine if your drill, or worse, the student who has the emergency, his drill keeps going. You've got a massive problem there.
Or it shuts down a different drill.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, so another one. The pump outlets let water back easily. So the height of the water pump is above the supporting rail. So that means when the water pump stops, water that's within the trough will start to go reverse.
Right.
Whereas if you lift the pump outlet above the normal water line, you can clearly see where the water is coming and stopping. But then when the water stops coming out, it doesn't trickle back through if you lift it above the water line. So that was one of the things that the forensics unit noticed. Next is local conditions. So the next cheese slice. So there's a new person and lack of training. So we talked about 1.5 hours minimum in the operator's procedure manual.
Right.
And
Also, that's dictated.
that is dictated according to the TRRR, whoever
Right.
wrote the training manual and the operator's manual.
Right. You could chalk this up and pack it up for the day, pretty much chalk it up to the individual incompetence of the person providing the training and go, why did you only give that person, any trainee, 1.5 hours? But then when you stop and realize, you go, hang on, it's in the training manual? It's like,
Yeah. Well, that's what a book says, right?
exactly. It's like, who wrote the book? Because at one point you're going, okay, easy. It's an easy problem to fix. You blame the person providing the training. And you go, hang on, the person providing the training, they were following the rules that they were given in the book.
Yeah.
Okay, who wrote the book? It keeps going up the scale, up the hierarchy.
Yeah. So on the day of the event, Miss Williams begins training at 9:25, and a little bit of extract from the coroner's report. Miss Williams acknowledged during her interview with OIR, so Office of Industrial Relations, and at the inquest that she had been shown 4 buttons as part of a circular motion to shut down the ride on the main panel, which included 2 emergency stops. However, Miss Williams disagrees that she was shown the shutdown for the conveyor as part of the emergency shutdown procedure to be followed at the main control panel. She was simply shown the buttons to press during the procedure and was not aware mechanically what those buttons did.
So you're pretty much just told, here is red button, green button, blue button, press those buttons, problem solved.
Yeah,
It's like-
press it in this order.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Some,
exactly.
computer
And you go-
game.
yeah, exactly. And you go, okay, what's the red button do? Well, the red button is connected to this.
Yeah.
And that information isn't there. So you go, okay, I just press 1, 2, 3, I'm done. Not, okay, first I have to turn off this process, then that process, then that process.
So 9:25 is when she starts working. Oh, so when she starts training. 10:05, TRRR open to public. And then Miss Crisp states that she advised Miss Williams as to the water level and referred her to the markings on the wall. She stated, as long as the rafts are bobbling around, you know that your water level is enough. As soon as they're not moving, or as soon as you notice that the level that drop, that's how you know that your water level is right. So, you think if this is supposed to be a water level sensitive ride, then
Yeah.
you'd think there's a water gauge.
Yeah, water gauge or an indicator on your control panels that is testing the ideal amount of water for you.
Yeah, so refer to the markings on the wall, which doesn't, the report doesn't say. It could be lines, I don't
Yeah.
know. It could be a bunch of leaves where they always dry up and stick to the
It's hard
to the
to
trough.
it's hard to say, but
With the brownish stuff on
Yeah.
the wall, on the trough.
But again, you compare this ride to, say, a standard roller coaster that has a lot more mechanical parts. What you'd be doing is that each of those rides are very specialized in 2 very different areas. So what you would need to do when setting up the safety procedures for that is making sure that the individual attributes, the unique attributes of those rides, that they are being catered for. So if this is a water ride and your water level is critical, you want to make sure that you've got all the information being relayed to your technician that is indicating that this ride is at peak optimal efficiency, not just a visual gauge off on the wall sort of
Yeah,
thing.
and you could easily just put an engineering control there, like a water gauge and a water
Exactly.
sensor.
Yeah.
Flash it up immediately,
Yeah.
rather than try to
Yeah.
I'm dealing with guests at the moment, and then the water level's over there, so I
Yeah.
can't have to turn my head around all the time.
We might get to this later, but I can imagine the immense pressure that these operators are put under to keep guests coming through, keep guests happy.
Yeah,
Because the last thing that you want is guests complaining on social media or to the management of the park going, I couldn't go to the ride because the line was so long,
Yeah.
because the operator is being extra diligent at their job. It's an impossible balancing act, really.
I'm just reading. It's like, what the rafts are bobbling. What does bobbling
Probably
mean?
mean,
Is it moving? Is it just
well,
going up and
again,
down?
go pull 10 people up off the street net right now and ask what they would constitute bobbling, and you'd probably get 10 different answers.
What are those? One of those things you get from EB games. Pop toys.
The pop figures, the head bobble things.
Head
yeah,
bobbles, yeah,
yeah, pop figures. Yeah.
All right, so continue. According to Miss Williams, while she was the main control panel with Miss Crisp, the yellow case enclosing the e-stop button, or emergency stop button, at the unload area was pointed out from a distance, which at the time had Mr. Williams' drink bottle on it.
Okay.
According to Miss Williams, Miss Crisp stated that this was the e-stop button for the unload side, and the words to the effect of, "But don't worry about
Oh,
it.
gosh.
No one ever uses it."
Oh no.
According to Miss Chris, she pointed out to the e-stop button and advised Miss Williams that it would stop the conveyor and the pump. She claims that she also stated that the only situation you'd use that in is, say you were unloading and Tim fell in. He obviously can't shut down the ride on himself. You can hit that to start the process rolling. In her subsequent statement to OIR, Miss Chris states that she told Miss Williams that she could press the e-stop if she was at the unload area and there was an emergency, and the ride needed to be stopped to get the shutdown started. However, she needed to alert the number one operator. She claims that she specifically mentioned a scenario of someone standing on the conveyor or a raft slipping down in the context of explaining what an emergency situation may be.
Right.
And then 11:15, so she starts at what, 9:25? Then 11:15, so she's finished training and she's deemed competent by the supervisor.
Right.
No practice drills, no tests, no shadowing, no testing knowledge. And you know what? You're 21 years old. You press that button, the shutdown process. Are you really going to be confident in performing that shutdown process?
No, of course not. No, because if you shut the ride down and it's deemed that you shut it down for not a good reason, you're fired. It's like, that's the thing that probably is going through someone's head like that, going, I don't want to lose my job because I've shut the ride down for no good reason.
All right, next one. Lack of situational awareness, or CCTV. So there's one monitor broken to 9 screens. I don't know how big this monitor is.
Right.
But 9 screens seems a lot.
Yeah.
Forensics Crime Unit Investigations, FCU, say that a CCTV monitor at the main control unit did not show the unload area or end of conveyor. The operator, so the number one operator that would be usually manned at the main control panel,
Yeah.
had an obstructed view from his post. So the person couldn't see it from the post, and it was not on the CCTV. So this guy is managing whole sorts of things. He doesn't have time to turn around and check everything.
Yeah. What you need, you needed a third person into that mix there. So you had a operator in the bay manning the station, and then a conductor essentially ferrying people onto the ride.
Yeah.
Number one operator's focus is not split between technical health and safety, mechanical and such, and taking care of patrons, of guests.
Or you could automate most of this stuff. It's 2016 back then. Like there was computers. There's
this way to the ride.
Yeah. Another one.
Yeah.
Popular ride. So, and there was a pressure to get complete technical checks and reopen a ride. So we talked about it.
Well, we were discussing that before. There's high pressure to keep people happy and keep people going through the ride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just noted some of the timing. So first pump failed at 11:50.
Right.
Then was open 12:21. So
Okay.
that's what, 41 minutes.
Yep.
Second pump failure, 13:09. Then
So
reopened at 13:25. So what, 16 minutes.
Right.
In a second time it failed.
You would expect that to be the opposite.
Yeah.
You'd expect a 16 or 15 minute pause between shutting it down and restarting for the first instance, and then a longer investigation for the second instance, because you're going, hang on, this thing has failed twice in the space of a couple of hours. What's going on?
Well, no,
here?
a couple of hours. So it says opened at 12:21 and then failed at 13:09.
Yeah.
So the gap between the first and second failure was, what is it, 40 minutes?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's shut for 45 minutes, then 40 minutes, and then it's reopened. 40 minutes later,
Yeah.
it's broken again, and then 15 minutes technicians come out and restarted and it's going again.
Well, it's getting better at resetting the ride, apparently.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Optimal reset efficiency.
No, but no investigations. That's the thing.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing. Yeah.
All right. So there's
No stopping and going, hang on, why is it failing again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Anyway.
the conditions. One more. Ollie. Yep. So lack of technical investigations, lack of engineering hazard assessment, lack of technical designs, and it was an old design. So it's made in 1985 to in 1986,
Yeah.
based off a 1979 Rapids River design in the USA.
We were talking about that earlier.
So
Yeah.
it's a very,
Very
old
old.
design. No one understands the faults. So when the pump failed earlier during the week, so this is not just a day, it's like a few days before. The engineering department has their specialist people who looks after all electrical drives. They contact them. No hazard assessment conducted. So engineering hazard assessment. So the guy who knows structures, mechanical parts, nipping points.
Yeah.
There's none of that done at all.
And again, because it's so old, probably the people who built the ride or who designed it, they've either passed on or they've retired or... Yeah.
Dead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No record of designer's documentation and records of modifications. So, old design, it's all done on paper.
Yeah.
It's all yellowing in
probably in the archive somewhere in the back of the office.
With the spiders and everything. A lack of servicing records, and we'll find later on, there was an engineering contractor invited to do all these assessments, and they were giving a blank logbook. So
was this after the accident?
This was before the accident.
Okay.
All right, so the next layer. So we talk about individual actions, local conditions, risk controls. What was some of the things that the organization put in place to prevent accidents from occurring?
Yeah.
So administration control, is one of the lower ends of control. If you can't manage it. So this is like people, this is talking about manuals, training, all that kind of stuff. So a lot of work was done around the old engineering design by tasking operators to manage it. So we talked about, I think you talked about 3-man teams.
Yeah.
So they actually did try to do that vary from 2 to 3. If you had 3, then you could put more rafts on there. If you had less, then you just put it back to 2.
Yeah.
There was the introduction of the e-stop. So the button that you can press to stop it supposedly stops everything. They were asked to monitor the water level, but they're still using the eyeballs, not gauges.
Not a gauge or a sensor.
Well, I didn't pick up any gauge or sensor, and some of the recommendations said that if you had a water gauge or a sensor, then you could have reduced the stress on the operator.
Yeah. Well, you just have a flashing light of the console saying, "Hey, there's a water level. It's below optimum water level. You should investigate." Okay, let's go have a look at this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on the control panel, there's some safety audits done. There's a lack of labels on these buttons. So it's just a red button or green button.
Yeah, exactly.
All the same.
For the record, we don't know what color button they are, but that's kind of the idea, the principle of it. Yeah.
And it's lack of guides on the button. So, I guess you recall at high school, it's like big red button.
Danger, stop.
Danger, stop.
Danger, warning.
And like someone's fingers being chopped off and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
It says,
exactly.
press this button, this is about to occur.
Yeah. Well, often those buttons have like a twist release. You have to twist it and then push it usually, I recall.
But here, I don't think I put a picture here, but they showed pictures in the coroner's report, and it's just the wooden post, which is, part of the ride, the shelter bit.
Yeah.
And there's this little random button there.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
Just like an on-off switch that on the wall of your room. Like, what does it do? I don't know.
It's like, does it turn the overhead light on?
Well, apparently it carries someone's water bottle. That's what it said.
Yeah.
So, okay.
But again, you can imagine the scenario playing out of, who was it? The instructor? No, the lady who was giving the training.
Yes, I think it was Miss Crisp. That's what.
Miss Crisp. Yeah, where she's just pointing off. Essentially, just dismissively in the general direction.
Don't worry about that. No one touches that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like, what is that?
Yeah.
I think I should know.
Yeah.
Lack of engineering controls. So the main control button, they talk about e-stop or emergency stop.
Yeah.
They actually say there was a standard stop button which takes 8 to 9 seconds to stop the conveyor. So, we expect from high school those, machines, press it, stops immediately. Not press it and it goes 8 to 9 seconds on that 2 kilometers per hour conveyor belt means life and death.
Yeah.
So no water sensors. There's no conveyor sensors at the end. So they actually had a conveyor sensor at the beginning if something gets trapped there.
Yeah.
And I guess there's what is there to stop collision? There's nothing there.
Yeah.
All right. So lack of reporting. So the TRRR, if there's faults or failures of critical components, they are to report it to the supervisor and manager. So we only heard about it once that it was reported to the engineering supervisor, and they asked the contractor to come in. And the engineering manager, he wrote these procedures, but it was never properly communicated. So he said, if there's any critical part, and I guess in this bit, conveyor or water pump, if that fails, report it immediately to the supervisor.
Yeah.
But what do we see in a technician? Well, it has to occur 3 times.
Yeah. Before I report and becomes a bigger issue.
The engineering manager wrote in the procedure immediately.
Right.
So that's very different. So there's whatever the engineering manager believes or wants to communicate, it's not flowing down
yeah.
to his people.
To the subordinates. Yeah.
That's a common thing.
Yeah.
All right. Previous incidents. So 18th of Jan 2001. So Miss Melinda Lind was rostered to perform the role of number 1 ride operator on the TRRR. She commenced the startup procedure at approximately 9:17 a.m., releasing all the rafts to run a full cycle prior to opening the ride to guests. She was the only operator present at the time. At around 9:30 a.m., Mr. Joe Stenning, who was rostered on as a number 2 operator for the TRRR that day, arrived and opened the queue line for guests. Whilst the empty rafts were travelling the watercourse, guests had commenced lining up. As Miss Lynn began speaking to guests in line, 2 rafts became stationary at the unload area, with a further third travelling down the conveyor, having completed a full cycle of the ride. This was noticed by both Miss Lynn and Mr. Stenning. However, no attempt was made by Miss Lynn to release the stranded rafts. As the 3 additional rafts came off the conveyor, they collided with the stationary rafts, causing one to flip. Having seen the rafts flip, an operational code 6 was called, at which time Miss Lynn called 222 and tried to describe the incident, which was not clear. She then hit emergency jack button and stopped the conveyor. The rafts were unable to be freed. Senior attraction staff arrived at the TRRR shortly afterward, and guests were cleared from the area. The following photographs of the aftermath of the incident depict the scene. And I put a photo in that which you can see from the coroner's report. It's just rafts all over the place. It's
And-
one flipped upside down, I believe. Yeah.
And it's strikingly similar to what happened in 2016.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so there's actually 4 rafts. The first one in the beginning
First
is
one
sort of
stalled.
tilted.
Yeah.
Then there's 2 rafts. The raft, the floaty bit,
Yeah.
they're back to back. So there's one on top and the one flipped upside down on the bottom.
Mm.
So the seats
Yeah.
on the bottom. And then there's a third one, there's the last one, which is like pivoted. And they're all, where is it? They're near the conveyor belt,
Yeah.
near that point. 2001.
So the warning signs were there.
Well, it's not the first time, is it? So the Dreamworld report. It was found that the push of the conveyor caused a compaction effect, resulting in the rafts being caught at the unload area and one raft flipping. It is then believed that the unload button may have been depressed, releasing a raft, but a second raft with the push of the additional rafts behind had got caught at the edge of the platform. So the contributory factors from the report. So this is Dreamworld doing their safety report.
Yeah.
It said distractions from guests. Second operator was late. The employee panicked, and there was a lack of communication.
Right.
So the result was there was emergency response scenario training for all ride operators in the various code 222s to help them with the confidence when involved in an emergency situation. The communication, a review of determining notification of broadcasts from code 222 phone calls. So trying to, if emergency happens, what's your
What's the
reporting?
process?
What's
Yeah.
your reporting process?
Yeah.
What's my things I need to know? Human resources to be involved in disciplinary action in regard to incorrect operation of ride.
Right.
So
So-
I am actually surprised at this. Like,
Yeah.
you are disciplined. It's an accident. Maybe you're pretty new, but you didn't do the right thing.
Yeah.
Fire. Amend procedures so that both operator and the deckhand should be present to start ride, opening and operating procedures on all occasions. So
Well,
You need-
just on the calling in human resources point there.
yeah,
Was this the responsibility of the 2 operators? Because it sounds like that there's a mechanical fault that isn't being addressed, but it doesn't sound like that this is a issue of the operators not pushing the right buttons.
Yeah.
Unless I'm not seeing something here.
well, it's like, human error.
Yeah.
Blame the person.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah, problem solved. Moving on.
Brush it over.
Yeah.
And then report, following the incident, Miss Lynn was moved into a position working in the food and beverage division of Dreamworld, however, resigned shortly afterwards. So,
Right.
she got moved from the rides to the, serving out at the cafeteria.
Yeah.
Maybe earn less money and then bye-bye.
Yeah.
There were safety audits that were done at Dreamworld, but they were all operations focused. So how you do business versus the engineering technical assessment. So that's when you have external contractors coming in, but they have lacking in technical experience to review the rides. Some of the,
It's also what your focus is. The focus here is not on mechanics and technical; it's on business and process. So when you're being presented with a problem, how are you looking at the problem?
if you're trying to fix it with people,
Yeah.
it's admin control, which is lower than engineering control, which is design,
Yeah.
structures, mechanics. Like they actually don't understand what they're dealing with.
Yeah. Well, a good example would be if you've got build up on a road, right? And it's a very busy intersection. Okay, you've got all these cars, and you've got two options. One is okay, and you're looking at the problem trying to solve it. You're looking at a people problem. You've got there's too many cars. If you're looking at a mechanical problem, it goes maybe we need to put a traffic light in to regulate flow, or do we put a roundabout in? And you go both. How you approach a problem dictates, or the perspective that you look at the problem dictates the different solutions that might come out.
Yeah, because you're only seeing one area, not seeing the whole picture.
Yeah, exactly.
So the audits just found signage issues, operations issues, buttons, the labeling issue, some technical improvements, but not the whole systems understanding, as you said. Next one, bad engineering certification. This is very interesting. Tom Poley was a private engineering contractor invited to do all the certification because there was a bit where they said all machinery needs to have their engineering renewed, and it's on Dreamworld or the operator to do that assessment, not the regulator. So he did not cite the certificate registration, and here's a bit of the report. In relation to the TRRR, Mr. Poley claims that he did not receive any completed maintenance documentation or logbooks. Rather, he was provided with blank daily and annual inspection schedule through email. So blank.
Yeah.
Mr. Poley
Blank, please fill out.
Yeah, fill out for us.
Yeah.
Mr. Poley was advised that there had been no issue with the TRRR for the past 12 months, and that there was no current maintenance documentation due to the effort being put into the Class 5 rides. In relation to the TRRR, Mr. Cruz gave evidence. So Mr. Cruz is one of Dreamworld's engineering technical staff. He gave evidence that the only information provided Mr. Poley was the preventative maintenance checklist. So therefore, what we're drawing out from this is no maintenance records were given to Mr. Poley. The downtimes, none of that was given. The certification was issued on the 17th of October 2016 based on the operational history logbook inspection of critical components.
Which, remember, the logbooks are blank.
Yeah.
So...
And they're not completed. Well, they're not completed, that's what I said.
Yeah. So essentially, the ride's what, at this point, is 30 years old? It was 86?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so we're talking about a 30-year-old ride. At no point has it been heavily renovated or refit with modern mechanical processes to update the old stuff. That hasn't happened or been brought up so far as a preventative measure. And all the logbooks are not maintained, are blank, and certifications are being drilled out every year, right? Without...
Well, how do you know that? Because they haven't documented it.
Yeah.
They've modernized it. They've obviously put in e-stops and emergency stop buttons.
Yeah.
There's no documentation.
There's
no documentation in here to say we've modified this and this is what we've done with this circuit board.
Yeah.
No one's tracking this. No, it's just not written down.
It is the perfect storm, actually. Yeah.
And so Mr. Poley, he in the coroner's report, he certifies the TRRR is mechanically and structurally sound, but because he's not a electrical engineer, he's only mechanical, he puts a caveat that he hasn't done any assessment on electrical or operations. But, Dreamworld has a certificate.
Yeah. So at some point you're going, well, I will give you the certificate in something that I don't know how to certify.
Yeah.
Yeah.
8 days later, then you have the accident.
Right.
Organizational influence. We're almost there. So, lack of qualified and trained personnel, or lack of RPEQ. So, I believe that's recognized professional engineer in Queensland.
Yeah.
So, there's reliance on a non-qualified person, Mr. Bob Tan, who worked since 1987. He became an engineer during his tenure, but was not recognized by the RPEQ. Well, not recognized as RPEQ, so not recognized by the state he's working in. He's gone through the ranks. He's gone through the rank of project manager, technical and service director, maintenance controller, general manager of engineering, and finally director of special projects.
Right.
So he's gone through the ranks. He's
He's earned promotion after promotion after
Yeah.
promotion just through tenure, going through your career as a lot of people do.
there's a lot of people like that. Like they're not qualified, but they gain. They can get into that position based on experience.
Yeah. And again, I think it's important that this isn't a slight at Dreamworld specifically going, this problem could have only happened in Dreamworld. This is a problem, or an issue rather, that happens in businesses all over the place, wherever you look.
Really, from an old job, like this is an old crusty guy, just wants to stay there.
Yeah. It's comfortable. I know what I'm doing. Yeah. And I can respect that attitude, but there's also, when you're promoting people, you need to make sure that there are some jobs that there's low risk attached to those jobs, attached to those roles. There are other jobs that have very, very high risk, and if there's high danger if you put the wrong person in charge.
Yeah. This is scrutinized by lawyers. So this is their comment. Like, yep, he's in engineering, but then, he's not our engineer in Australia. He might, come from a different background. So on the 2001 incident, he forwarded that on to the executives. He comments, "This occurred on a rapid river ride several years ago. Unfortunately, there was no injury except for property damage. I shudder when I think if there had been guests on the rafts." 13th of November 2014.
2 years before the accident.
And then we talked about an engineering head. So Mr. Christopher Deves responded to Mr. Tan's email inquiring as to how the incident on a TRRR had occurred, as he had never seen or heard of the event.
Right.
Mr. Tan responded stating, "Scary photos, huh?" He also noted, allowing rafts to bank up against a raft at unload dock. But that's it. I was going through the report. It doesn't say Mr. Tan can explain how it occurred, apart from it's all rafts just piling up at the unload bit.
It's like pretty much just told the raft just flipped.
Yeah.
That's it. That's as far as you can go.
But that's it. That's where they stopped. This is the heads of special projects, engineering department.
Yeah.
I don't know. These are your leaders.
Yeah. And these are the people that the buck stops with. Yeah. And they're sitting, by their own admission, they're sitting there saying, I've never seen or heard of it before.
Because no one ever reports it.
Because
it's not documented.
Because the logs aren't being maintained.
Yeah.
And why aren't the logs being maintained? Because there's not leadership from the top that's flowing down saying, hey, we need to record this. Instead, it's, okay, just reassign the person, make sure that, put some surface level fixes to fix the problem for the next time, move on, carry on as normal. That's a top level leadership problem that's flowing down.
It is.
Yeah.
Safety team. So the safety team only consists of first aiders, not professional safety staff. So the guys who know your regulation, WHS Act, stuff that I know it sounds pretty boring at the beginning of the year, but this keeps your boss out of trouble.
Yeah, yeah.
It keeps families from dying. There's another one, organizational cultural thing. Focus on business or new rides over the maintenance of old. So this is not from a coroner's report. This is from a news article from news.com.
Oh, yeah.
So definitely trustworthy. But it says, the inquest heard Dreamworld place priority on newer attractions ahead of older rides, such as the Thunder River Rapids ride. Former safety manager Mark Thompson agreed familiarity had bred contempt when it came to managing and maintaining the 30-year-old ride. The inquest at a Queensland Coroner's Court on the Gold Coast heard newer facilities such as a Lego shop and the redesign of the Tiger Island attraction were placed before the older attractions. New attractions were given a greater priority than the tried and true ones. Barrister Matthew Hickey, representing Miss Lowe's family, asked Mr. Thompson. Yes, he replied. Yeah. So when you're all focused on the new shiny stuff, the old stuff doesn't get
any attention,
and the old stuff doesn't.
Yeah,
it's lacking maintenance.
And again, I can understand and appreciate that a business is going, we need to be forward focused. We're focusing on expanding business, on growing new things. But when you're dealing with complex products such as theme park rides, and again, it's not just with a theme park, it's with any business that is dealing with machinery, complex machinery, you can't be so forward focused that you then neglect, or as the word was, be contemptful of the old machinery and just let it go off, just drift off to the side and not worry about it. You can't do that.
Yeah, you can put kids on it.
Exactly. No, don't do that.
Well, that's what Dreamworld does. Like,
I know. I know. Let's say for this scenario that we are not following Dreamworlds as a role model in this scenario.
Leaders were unaware.
Yeah.
So there's vague communication from we've picked up.
Yeah.
What is the employee's acceptable level of risk? We talked about 3 times a day was 3 failures on that specific ride means we can shut down. That's what they believed.
Yeah.
That's not communicated properly, is it? Because
in the manual it said,
well, the engineering head says,
that's right,
if something critical occurs on that ride,
shut it down.
Let me know, shut it down.
Yeah.
Reports weren't making their way up the chain of the leaders. Well, and then
empty logbooks. Thank you.
And then you have this idea, who's responsible for the safety of this stuff? Is it the operators or the technicians? Who is ultimately responsible for resourcing a safety team with the properly qualified people? So you have a safety team, yeah? It's safety team. This is my special bunch of people.
Yeah.
They're not really qualified. They're first aid trained.
They're first aid.
They don't do engineering hazard assessments.
Yeah.
Or training at all.
So yes, they are a safety team. They're a safety team in the respect of people, but they're not a safety team in respect of maintaining machinery.
Looking after regulations.
Yeah.
So managing regulations, managing the training. Realizing that 1.5 hours isn't.
I would use the term woefully inefficient in being given the tools that they needed to do their job.
Yeah. Ta-da! Safety team.
Yeah.
All right. So what happens here in investigations at ATSB, so Australian Transport Safety Bureau, is it only goes at 4 levels. Some sort of company.
Yeah.
There's another one that Norwegians introduces, which is the regulatory framework, because what goes beyond organization, it's government law that shapes these organizations.
Yeah, that's right.
It gives them the big box of where they can operate.
That's right. Here's the box you can operate. Don't stray again, the role of government here is providing the broad boundary rules of where you can sit, keeping them broad enough so that they aren't restrictive, but also making sure that businesses can't go, hey, I have a factory, I'm going to go pollute the local river. We have rules to stop that sort of thing because it's harmful.
You get jailed.
Exactly. That's how the relationship, the push and pull between, or the innate greed of a business is curtailed by the power of the government, and it keeps them both in tension.
Regulatory framework. There's too much trust by the regulator, and there's multiple extensions and allowances given to the Dreamworld. It says in the report, so OIR Chief Engineer Michael Chan recommended that the extensions be granted on the basis that, on my knowledge of Dreamworld's maintenance, inspection, and testing regime, that a delay of a few months for a professional engineer to progressively conduct annual inspections will not introduce significant risks to Dreamworld's continued operation. During the inquest, Mr. Chan clarified that whilst he did not have detailed knowledge of the maintenance on the individual rides at Dreamworld, he had previously had discussions with Mr. Deves, whom he had a long-standing professional relationship, about the existence of the inspection and testing program, and this was the basis of his recommendation. The inspection and testing program. There was, I think we recall from the teachable law that there was a blank
logbook.
I don't
know. I'm going to be a bit sarcastic here, but I think I read something about a blank logbook, maybe?
A blank logbook. When's the maintenance schedule? We don't have one.
Yeah, here's your daily and your monthly and your annual blank. Please fill out.
Yeah. So this
the ball's definitely been dropped here.
So there's an extension given because basically the OIR came into the picture and said, you guys, when you do certification, it needs to be done by a RPEQ, so Recognized Professional Engineer Queensland, not Mr. Bob Tan, who's not an RPEQ.
Yeah.
That's what they define as qualified and competent.
Or the option is you say to Bob Tan, hey, go get your qualification and then you can do the job.
Yeah.
Like there's multiple options here for you. But none of them were taken up. It was just, okay, just continue on, drift on, push it aside, we'll keep moving on. And that's where problems happen.
It does. That's the little big cracks.
Yeah.
29th of September 2016, another extension request was given. Dreamworld tried to find the RPEQ engineer to conduct a hazard assessment, and it was recommended by the chief engineer of OIR, by Mr. Chan. there's another focus by the regulators on mobile theme parks. So at that time, there was a focus by the OIR on mobile theme parks because there was a crushing injury which occurred during the packing and unpacking of theme parks.
Right.
It makes sense. What's the thing that can go wrong? Well, dismantling heavy machinery and setting it up.
Yeah.
It falls on you. It crushes the guy setting it up.
Yeah.
So that's where the focus was. And so, for this old ride, we're never packing and unpacking it up. It's going to stay the same. Just turn it on and off. Auditing oversight. So this ride was authorized by the Chief Inspector of Machinery. I guess that's an old office position. In 14th of August, 1987. There was no reports. Every time you do a modification, you report it to the Chief Inspector of Machinery and you say, this is the latest mod that we do.
Yeah.
Please record it down. Please update our registration. None of that was
happening.
occurring. No.
No.
There was an audit done by OIR in 18th November 2003. So the TRRR was inspected. No breach of WHS was found.
Okay.
And then there was another incident in 12th of October 2014, responding to when a female guest fell into the water.
Okay.
And it says on that 2014 visit, the site visit took 1.5 hours. Notebook recordings and the findings of the investigators state that assessment regarding the safety, load, and unload procedures, e-stop fitted at deparcation point, CCTV to monitor point, electronic stop and release system is being upgraded. Second gate option currently being investigated. So they talk about, gates to stop them from piling up and contact each other. 1.5 hours. And everything's
well, you can probably speak towards this one. Is 1.5 hours enough time to do a review like that?
No, I mean, you'd go through the whole thing, but then I guess they focus on the woman falling into the water, rather than nipping points and rafts tipping over.
And again, the scenario that I was talking about before, of if you've got a build-up of traffic at this intersection, what's your focus? Are you focused on the cars that are coming in, or are you focused at the problem going, okay, what can we do to fix it? If your focus is put in a different context, your solutions or recommendations are going to change.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Wrapping this one up. So recommendations by the coroner and the aftermath. So aftermath. Referrals by the coroner of Ardent Leisure. So that's the company that owns Dreamworld to OIR.
Yeah, I do remember in the news that Ardent Leisure got raked pretty heavily over the gravel with this one.
You're looking at like criminal negligence.
Yeah.
Tom Poley, the engineer who certified the ride, was referred to the board of professional engineers.
Right.
For professional conduct, I believe.
Yeah.
I tried to look these guys up. Some of them, some of these guys that we mentioned in the report, you look them on LinkedIn. Some of them have been no longer there.
Right.
Engineering controls was a recommendation. So, if you try to rely too much on those two people, let's try to manage the risk by putting automation in there to relieve the stress of going between the family of noisy kids and also managing the water level and also the unload area.
Yeah.
Let's put some of that automation in. Lack of safety management, oversight, and commitment.
Empty logbooks.
Yeah. So just because the managers weren't aware was not deemed acceptable.
Yeah.
So no effort was made to search for issues, to dig deep into your organization and find out surely there's something wrong. Just because it's old ride and with nothing happened seriously, no fatalities, doesn't mean there's an issue there.
Well, again, if anything, an older ride would be even a brand new ride and an old ride, both on those opposite ends of the spectrum. I would say would be the two warning groups that you'd be looking at rides going, okay, we need to keep a close eye on these new ones because they're brand new, they haven't been fully road tested yet, and you want to make sure you iron out all the kinks. The old ones, because they're so old, they start to fail.
Yeah. Old cars, new cars, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Use the example of a car. If a car is, say, 2 or 3 years old and there hasn't been any incident, you go, okay, that's pretty good. 10 or 20-year-old car, you're like, I'm going to sleep with one eye open looking at that thing, pretty much.
Yeah. Regulatory changes. So there's how to put notifications placed in your notebook. So if there's an issue and the OIR wants to come in and they've shut down the ride or to do some kind of restriction on it, they put a notification out. And they say, these are to be put into your logbook so that when the certifier comes out, it's there. It's aware for them to see, so they don't get blank logbooks.
Yeah.
One of the things I actually noticed was Ardent Leisure was adopting aviation safety management. So
Aviation safety?
yeah, so a lot of the stuff that we talked about, the methods of investigation, some of the checks, some of the making sure you have people who are properly qualified. These are all like regulation best practices. So
Right.
aviation best practices.
Oh, I follow you.
And they're trying to like follow those things.
Right, okay, gotcha. Yeah.
All right, so reflections and change of thoughts, assumptions and trust. Well, Pat, who do you think is to blame?
Initially, my assumption, and this is based off the information I've been given from media, from the news, from the TV, from evening news and newspaper articles that I read back in 2016 and 17 at the time, I was assuming that this was a personnel issue on the operators.
Yeah.
When we've dug into the details of the coroner report, I'm seeing actually they're essentially somewhat of an innocent victim of gross mismanagement on the leadership side, and the leadership problems looks like it started from the very top, and it's filtered all the way down, causing a cascade of more and more problems that are getting more serious. And you've then got the individual operators caught up in this mess. You've got you were reading the story of the was it the paramedic at the start?
Yes.
He's now dealing with PTSD.
Yeah.
You've got all these innocent, essentially bystanders who are now casualties of this gross mismanagement that's caused by in this case the Dreamworld leadership team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, I think in the coroner, well, when they're doing the trials on the coroner, the lawyers, I think they actually try to pin the blame on those number one and number two operators, and I'm actually glad they didn't, because you know what, those two people were placed in their
there's nothing
bad
they could
time.
There's nothing they could have actually done.
Yeah, like if you try to swap him out for a bunch of other crew, I think
you'd get the same problem.
The same thing.
Yeah.
So.
No, if you, I think when you're trying to assign blame, you look at it and go, is there anything that they could have done different that would have resulted in a more favourable outcome? And in this case, the operators, I can't think of anything that they could have done necessarily to have improved, to cause a more favourable outcome. However, with the upper level management, with the leadership team, the engineering team, there was a litany of different things that they could have done in the weeks, months, years leading up to this event.
2001.
I know, yeah. Well, there was an email exchange going, hey, pretty crazy stuff in these photos, right? Yeah, I think we should actually look into that.
Oh, how did it occur? I don't know.
Exactly. It's like, let me go check the logbook.
It's pretty scary stuff.
Oh, the logbook's empty.
Yeah. So how preventable was this accident? What do you think?
I think it was highly preventable because, for my take at least, I'm looking at this going, the leadership team is at fault here. Yeah. There's gross mismanagement there. How could it have been prevented? Reporting back in 2001, between 2001 and 2016, if they'd been keeping an accurate report of issues and faults, the warning signs could have been picked up sooner, and preventative measures could have been taken.
Yeah. All right, so we're talking about some of the findings, recommendations before. So do you think they make sense?
I think so. Yeah. 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 I mean, they do, in this case, the coroner's report does, and their findings and their recommendations do actually make sense on how you can essentially stop something like this from happening in the future.
Yeah, because we looked at the first incident in 2001. It's like HR for this person, HR, you didn't do the right thing.
Yeah,
get fired. You look at professional investigation, such as what a coroner's done, is some of the issues up the chain.
Yeah.
What do you think is missing from this? What's missing from the story? Do you think we've covered up everything?
I think so.
Yeah? You think you can tell the story and you can figure out what went wrong?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. It's good to know. All right, so some of my bits. So we've done multiple episodes on tragedies and accidents. And we always recognize that in a tragic event, there's always some precursor event. So,
Yeah.
the
There's a lead up.
There's the Korean vessel. Well, you could see some of the protests. There's some
Yeah.
issues of management.
I was actually remembering that
Yeah.
cruise ship
Yeah.
capsizing. There were a lot of parallels in the lead up of it's because again both of them they came down to mechanical issues that weren't being addressed by the people in charge.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of striking parallels.
Gallipoli, remember Gallipoli?
Yeah.
Well, it was also the Russian-Japanese War.
Yeah.
And the guy who led the Australian forces in Gallipoli was also in the Russian-Japanese War.
Yeah, as an observer.
So I think, you know what? It's a very human thing that we just discussed. To forget is to be human.
Yeah.
And there's a safety is always a boring thing to talk about. But it's like, the battle of safety is to fight human tendencies for us to be lazy, to shortcut. Because you know what? That's the easiest thing to do.
Yeah, we take the easy option. Yeah, that's human nature.
I think I learned that we can be trusting, where we can be too trusting of big companies. So Dreamworld, it's like for the American guys, it's like you go into Miami or Florida, and there's always you go to Disneyland.
Yeah,
for us it's like Gold Coast, Dreamworld.
Yeah,
and it's a big brand thing. Like you turn on TV, you want this trip to Gold Coast, you're going to Dreamworld. Yeah, it's like, oh my gosh, you're going to Dreamworld. You want to go to Dreamworld now?
The fallout. The fallout of this mismanagement is that a major tourist icon has been, I would say, irreparable. Not sure if it's irreparably damaged, but it's been severely damaged in the eyes of the public. And again, for very, very good reason. Like you've made your bed, now you get to sleep in it, pretty much. But the damage that's been caused is very, very significant, and it doesn't just impact the upper level management of a corporate company. You've got employees, you've got people that provide goods and services that rely on Dreamworld as a business they can supply their goods and services to. You've got local accommodation. It's a central nexus point that has a far-reaching impacts when something like this happens.
Yeah, it's like a cost-benefit analysis. So, the engineering, to build a circuit, you can go to JCar, and just build a circuit and put in some kind of water sensor in.
Yeah.
How much that costs? Maybe
$50, $100.
Engineering costs.
Yeah.
The legal costs, the reputational costs, the business costs, the compensations that be dealt is so much more in magnitude compared to engineering fixes and spending extra time.
If some people had shown a level of initiative, and I would argue a level of leadership, being assertive and taking charge of a potentially dangerous situation, recognizing the warning signs, going, hang on, this doesn't sound right. Okay, I'm going to be the one to fix it. As opposed to just, just let it aside. That's fine. I'm just going to...
Not my job.
No, it's not my job. It's not in my job description. It's above my pay grade. And again, it's not just one individual at fault. It's multiple levels of leadership that have failed in their duty, in their job, and it's cascaded down into the tragedy that's now occurred.
Yeah, and you know what? The lower down, as you said, the lower down the chain, the less options you have, the less impact you get to make, and it's too late.
Yeah,
and you're trapped in that little box in your day-to-day job.
Yeah.
When we examine the findings in the coroner's report, we find a number of safety factors that point to an organizational problem. I found them to align under the 5 factors of James Reason's safety culture. That is reporting, just, flexible, learning, and informed. In reporting, there were communication issues from the executives down to the first responders. There was an expectation of immediate reports to be made to the executives on critical components on the rides, versus the technicians believing that only a fault need to be reported when it occurred 3 times on a ride. inflexible, people seem driven to get the job done. However, it's a different thing to prioritize the reopening of the ride to the guests without investigating what went wrong. The engineering team did not bring forward the contractors and experts to examine the pumps. They were willing to let it go to the appointment. Were they applying good judgment to shut down the ride for safety's sake without questioning what is going wrong? Just culture? Was Dreamworld just to relieve the operator in the 2001 incident and transfer her to the food and beverage? How can anyone be open report if there's a fear of making mistakes? Learning. Did Dreamworld take the lessons seriously from 2014 onwards? They continue to use admin controls. Were they actually learning how the fault occurred? Informed. Information is lost over time, and there's a lack of in-depth investigations into the faults. Executives communicated on a 2001 incident. They questioned how did such an event occur. They weren't willing to bring in the right trained and qualified people to manage the matters. There's lots of documents which made it hard when people move on from the company. The lesson here is that any business dealing with machinery is at risk here. There are so many leadership lessons to pick up with managing the risks of machinery and humans. When we look back at the people involved on the TRRR, yes, the operators were the last line of defense and the ones on the ground operating the machine. However, it is very hard to put blame on their shoulders, and we shouldn't because they were put in a very hard place and given little tools and training to manage complex machinery that, should it fail, lead to a fatality. If you like the series, please like, share and subscribe. Put a link on your social media profile for your friends to listen to. Every support counts and motivates me to develop new episodes. You can also reach us by email at thefireinthedesert@gmail.com and Twitter @fireinthedesert. Music is Outfoxing the Fox by Kevin McLeoud at imcontact.com. And thank you for listening to another episode of The Fire in the Desert.